Listeners, I'm excited to have return guests this week, Dave Smith and Brad Johnson, who are co-authors of the important new book, Fair Share: How Men and Women Can Create an Equitable Workplace Together. They also wrote The Good Guys: How Men Can Be Better Allies for Women in the Workplace, and originally, how we originally got connected back in the day, 2017, Athena Rising: How and Why Men Should Mentor Women at Work. And Brad's a clinical psychologist, professor of leadership ethics and law at the U.S. Naval Academy. Dave is professor of practice and co-director of the Gender and Work Initiative at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Welcome back. So glad to see you, Brad and Dave.
Good to be
Great to
back
be
with you,
with you.
Julie.
In unison. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, You all are just like, you've been incredible allies to me personally, professionally, just always there, that like constant drumbeat that we talk about as what true allyship is. Not when it's cool, not when it's in the headlines, but like truly when it matters most. And, these moments right now, especially since the election and the headwinds we faced, we've needed our allies more than now than ever. So thank you for continuing to show up. Thank you for this important research. Fair Share is an important read. Highly recommend. Um, Brad, I'll start with you. Tell me the why, like, tell me about the progression. So Athena Rising, was it 2017, 2016,
16.
16?
Hmm.
Yep. And then I wrote one, the Men as Allies book,
That's
2017. That's
right.
how we got it connected. So yeah, so Athena Rising happens 2016, 2020, Good Guys happens, then Fair Share. So walk us through the lineage, how your work has evolved.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to. And it's so good to be with you again on this important podcast, Julie. So it was back in, I think, 2014-ish that Dave and I started comparing notes. We were both at the Naval Academy, both professors, both working in, the behavioral science area, and both super curious about the evidence showing that men can be reluctant to engage with women at work and in different formats, whether it's as a close friend or mentee, mentor, whatever that might look like. The evidence just shows that women get less access. And part of the problem is that men don't lead in. So that really instigated our work on the first book, Athena Rising. And that was really a deep dive into what do women say they most appreciate from men who really lean in interpersonally as mentors. And we asked some very behavioral questions. All these women that we interviewed, what does it look like to you, or what do you most appreciate when a male has really been a terrific mentor? What are the behaviors? So that was Athena Rising, and it really focused on interpersonal allyship as we kind of think about the work we do. And then you remember Me Too went widespread, and Dave and I found ourselves getting pulled into much bigger conversations just about, hey, wait a minute, in this moment, how can men just show up in the workplace as collaborators, colleagues, partners to promote gender fairness at work? So, really, kind of, I think we pivoted from the interpersonal to the public at that point. How do I
And you're
disrupt?
and you were on stages with like Sheryl Sandberg. I mean, not to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
inflate, but like, wow, you were really like very public with the message at a really important time.
Dave was on the stage with Sheryl Sandberg. I'm a little envious, but we have been able to interview Sheryl for all three of our books, and so grateful to her
Yeah.
for her support. But yeah, Dave was, I think it was something, the Makers Conference. Was that it,
Yeah,
Dave, with
yeah.
Sheryl Sandberg? Um, so yeah, that was really getting to, hey, what does it take for men to
Yeah.
disrupt in real time bias and sexism? Those myriad inappropriate comments and behaviors that occur all around us every day. And also loudly advocate for women, right? Putting a little more skin in the game. As Sheryl Sandberg would say, don't just be nice to women. How do you loudly advocate for them even when they're not in the room? All of that was well and good. We've been very busy with that. But I think what became really, really clear is that all of these ally efforts are going to be sort of one by one by one forever. And as you said, in our pre-chat, Julie, it relies on the goodwill of the male allies that are sort of already doing the work, but we're not changing the workplace in many cases. And until the workplace changes, you see all the estimates that we have about a century to go to get to real gender parity and things like pay. So that really led us into this kind of what we think of as kind of the final part of our trilogy on allyship, which is how do we change the workplace and how can men who want to advocate and partner for gender fairness push their own workplaces to become more gender fair by changing policies and practices, the way we do business.
Yeah, I love that. The trilogy. Ah, like allyship trilogy, Athena Rising, Good Guys, Fair Share. Oh, that's cool. Because it really does build off of each other and it really follows like the timestamps of what's happening societally. So I appreciate you always having a pulse on what's happening now and what needs to happen in the future. Dave, I want to bring you in on this. So, Fair Share, you interviewed droves of folks. I got to chat with you, which was so enlightening. And I think one of the key nuggets you found early on in the research that really bears a lot of fruit into the book is this idea that caregiving falls heavily on women. And we know all the stats on that, especially here in America, where we don't have a lot of extra support. But we often focus on women when men become fathers as well. And caveat here, when men become fathers, expand on this, but I think if I'm getting the research correct, they become better leaders. Like there's a lot of skill sets that transfer from fatherhood to leadership. So tell us more about that nugget you found and how you used it as like a key ingredient for the book.
I think one of the things that we find that gets left out of this conversation, and hopefully it is a conversation that's happening across workplaces, is the what's in it for men, right? And often this is the focus is on women, as in many cases it should be, in terms of what we're trying to, remove barriers and challenges that women face every day. But in doing this work, there's often something that works for everybody in here, and that's I think we found that as well in Good Guys, that a lot of the things when we change and shift behavior, right, it improves things for us as men as well. And certainly as leaders and managers, that's true. But we also found in Fair Share that, hey, there's a whole mountain of research out there that shows how it improves men's lives broadly, including their home life and relationships that they have at home. And I think one of the things that, we find really interesting out there is that it has deep implications for the relationships that we have with our children, of course, when we show up and we're doing sustained caregiving, especially at a young age for young infants and watching them grow and kind of imprinting on them along the way there. And it changes our brain too. And great research there by Darby Saxby. And if you haven't read Darby's book out there, everybody, Dad Brain is just a phenomenal read, and I would highly encourage you to get out there and read about the science, the neuroscience behind this, which to us is really exciting to include that in the book. But dad's brains begin to shift and change too. So dad brain, like mom brain, is a real thing, right? And we see shifts and change. But interestingly, it improves different aspects of who we are as people too, right? And our connection into trying to read and understand other people's needs, like this small infant that can't talk to me or express what they really need or want. And I have to begin to anticipate and to read that, right? And so we're developing these skills around empathy that translates right back into the workplace when we go back to work. We don't lose that. That becomes a part of us and who we are in that experience. And we're going to employ that in a variety of different ways when we get back into the workplace. And that's just one of many of the examples I think about how parenthood broadly and caregiving changes who we are as people and as leaders and managers. And some great research that went out there. Kate Mangino and Lisa Kaplowitz wrote about it in Harvard Business Review not too long ago about all these different skill sets that we improve upon or develop while we're in these caregiving roles for sustained periods of time, which is the importance again around having significant periods of paid leave so people can be doing this in a way that they can focus on what needs to happen at the same time they can translate that back into the workplace when they get there. And I think a lot of times employers don't necessarily recognize that, hey, these things that make these people really good when they come back to work, they developed
Mhm.
while they were on that paid leave that you made available as part of your policy and the practice that you have in your organization. So there's just, I mean, a host of incredible benefits that are there. And we forget to talk about these things. In some ways, I think we just assume that people know about them. It's like, hey, there's a lot in this for men and
Yeah.
mothers, right? And the workplace. So everybody tends to gain when we see this is done really well. And workplaces really start to think about how do I create this culture of valuing care and caregiving more broadly across the workplace and understanding that, hey, we know that at any one time about 70% of your workforce identifies as a caregiver.
Hmm.
70%. Yet employers often don't recognize that because they don't have visibility or transparency with their workforce on who's a caregiver and who's not, and what those needs might be. Because again, there's things that are preventing us from asking those kinds of questions, and certainly employers feel fearful of doing that. And then, of course, we as employees are fearful of,
Hmm.
again, of disclosing and divulging that information because I'm afraid that I'm going to be
Hmm.
discriminated against. And so we have this gap, this awareness about who caregivers are, what they might need, and how we can support those needs so that we can get to these great benefits we've been talking about.
So much there. So much there, Dave. As always, what's in it for men? Like, what's in it for all of us? And
Mm,
like many things, when we design things inclusively, they work better for everyone, not just
Yeah.
the folks that we had intended use for. And yes, women are often still primary caregivers. Yet men actively have for generation. We've seen this with millennials and now with Gen Z want to be more active as fathers, but it almost feels like the workplace conditions it out of us. Like we have these
Yes.
hopes and values, and it's not because individuals don't want to do it, it's because the systems aren't created to support it. And I felt so seen and heard in the book with my own experiences being pregnant and a new mom in the workplace. You literally crying over spilled milk in a closet
Hmm.
where I was trying to pump for spilled milk. And I was
Yep.
like, oh, and it's no coincidence that I left corporate America when my daughter was about 9 months old because it's just, and I see this so much today with women, like we want to stay, we want to make it work, but it's so taxing and you're so exhausted and it feels like everywhere you turn, there's an obstacle. And, who are you going to choose when it comes down to it? A little baby or your job, even your career that you've worked so hard for. And I feel for women. I really do. I came back way too early on both of my leaves and had some of these practices been in place with the book, it would have saved me
Mm.
and the organizations I was trying to support a lot of heartache. So thank you for making that business case. I think you also in the book, Brad, get to like specific recommendations. So like a point of contention I have in our work right now as it evolves is like individuals versus systems, right? And you talked about this in Athena Rising and Good Guys. It was very individual allyship focus where we're, expecting these people to put on not rescue capes, because you talked about that. We're not looking for that. We're not looking for saviors or work dads or these other weird things. Real allies, we keep asking them, like, keep doing more. And like everyone, they're like, what about everybody else? And like,
Yeah.
if we make this the default, right? If we make the systems conducive to support allyship, then we invite more allies. But when you make it hard or you don't make it routine or you don't make it obvious for people, it's going to keep going the way it's going and the status quo is going to stay alive and well. So, Brad, tell us more
Yeah.
about what workplaces can do to have more inclusive systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we have 5 hours because there's a lot. So
Right.
let me just give you like my top, things that are just top of mind, today. Um, Number one, I would love to have us do a deep dive into, if I'm running an organization, our managerial training, right? We tend to promote people to manager based on their performance in their last job, not based on their EQ, their ability to manage people inclusively, their ability to execute policies that actually would promote more gender fairness. We really don't get managers ready for this. So I would love to have us select managers more carefully, and then in fairness, really prepare and support those managers. So for example, if we've got paid leave and flex work when somebody is having a child. And, flex work maybe in that fifth trimester for her when she's coming back, after some maternity leave period. We've got flex work, we've got hybrid work, we have all of these policies on the books. But if my manager doesn't know how to execute that, and if my manager doesn't feel supported in actually letting me take those benefits, we're not going to get any value from that. And we're going to lose a lot of talented people that we don't need to lose in terms of coming back. I would love to, boy, structurally, I would love to collect more data and better data. I would like to do a deep dive every 6 months into hiring, into retention and advancement of women. I'd like to also include pay. And then I'd love to disaggregate that and look at Black women and women of color and women with other intersectional identities. I'd like to have that data to really get brass tacks about how much progress we're making. Then I'd love to make that transparent. This makes a lot of executive leaders palpably anxious when you start talking about transparency when it comes to the data. But you've got to share it. You've got to share it with your team. You've got to share it internally because that's how you build trust with your own employees. Hey, here are our targets when it comes to women in leadership. Here was our progress last year. Obviously, we fell a bit short. Here's what we're doing to try and mitigate those difficulties and do better next year. That's how you build trust. And then, boy, are you willing to buff up your courage even more and share that data externally? This is how you build trust with your consumers, with potential employees. I think
Mhm.
this is how you build trust writ large. So good data, support for your managers in terms of executing the policies. Those are two that are big for me.
Yeah. Well, and the Peter Principle is alive and well, where we promote somebody that was a great individual contributor into
Yeah,
leadership where they're not necessarily a good leader. And I
yeah,
saw that so much in sales. I still do a lot of coaching with sales leaders that were great sales people and not great sales managers. You're like,
yeah.
oh, yikes. Yeah, like what got you there literally won't get you there. Like,
Oh my
here
goodness.
will get you there. Yeah.
I feel the same way about mentoring. I'm sure you do too,
Yes.
Julie. I think there's often a lot of press that, hey, in our new mentoring program,
Mhm.
if you're above this level, you're going to mentor maybe junior women coming in the door. And I just want to cringe and say, nope. That person, I don't want to ever see a mentor anyone. And it's not that they're fundamentally
Right.
bad people. They just do not have
Yeah.
the essential skill set to show up with EQ.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could do better
I hear
in
you.
allocating those jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in the age of AI, being able to measure some of the stuff you're talking about, it used to be like these scorecards I used to recommend when I first started, like, oh yeah, get a scorecard with like your hiring data, your recruiting data, promotions, separations, pay increase. Put in a dashboard like with different teams and get competitive about who's moving up and down.
Yeah,
And people
yeah,
look at me like wild-eyed, like, I just know you can build something like that. Like, you can too. It's in your HR system. You just don't want to. And now
right.
you can automate it with AI and probably make it a lot easier. I'm just
Yeah,
guessing here, people. It
yeah,
might be more
yeah,
complicated. And yes, privacy is a concern. So disclaimer, disclaimer. But the other part you hit on is competency. Like we should be measuring success by competency, skills, abilities, attributes, not just actual performance, because someone
yeah,
might be getting performance at the cost of their team, at the cost of the
yeah,
organization, might be doing things, getting the what, but not doing it in the how way. And that's something we talk a lot about in my leadership classes here at Indiana University, because if you get there, but you get there in a way that's harmful, it shouldn't be good performance. And I think we
yeah,
still really struggle with that. We reward a lot of bad behavior. And as long as we make it okay for one person, we make it okay for everybody.
yeah.
So wonderful nuggets there. Dave, I'm going to turn it back to you to wrap us up. I love, Brad, what you shaved, kind of the magic wand moment.
Yeah.
I love what you painted there. Dave, what would you add? Like, what is your wish? You all are both grandfathers now. You're both, you've been doing this work a long time. What do you hope? Like, where do you hope this work goes?
So, my magic wand, do I get to make a wish?
You get another magic wand.
All
Yeah.
right, I got a magic wand. I want universal childcare. And
Yeah.
here's why I say that, because there's a lot of things I could pick here and they're all important at the end of the day. The reason I go to that because I see the downstream consequences of not having it right now today is causing a lot of the challenges that, again, there may be incidental to systems and practices that are in the workplace, but we could solve a lot of that by having that. And I'm going to focus on the United States for just a minute here because probably most of your listeners are here that if we had some sort of universal childcare here in the US, it would solve a lot of the issues that we're having today around kind of gendered norms for different roles, right? For women and men are different, right? Somehow women are natural, innate caregivers and men are these natural, innate breadwinners. Not so much. We live in a world where most of us are in dual earner, dual career families. We're both earning paychecks. We both need them, right? And we're all caregivers. So we need to be able to do both of those things. And we just have no support system when it comes to childcare in this country. And if you have to wait until your kids go to school, into kindergarten, I mean, you've lost 5 years in the process, right? And getting to pre-K and other forms of childcare and funding that is just another way to people talk about you can't get there from a funding or finance perspective. I'm like, well, you can balance the
Mhm.
books because guess what? Those moms and dads that are going to go back to work while their kids are in daycare or childcare or in school, guess what? They're funding that economic engine for you in that budget, that GDP that's going to pay all the taxes that are going to go into this. So there is a way, right? We just have to think bigger when it comes to this. And I think having some form of universal childcare solves a lot of these issues for us. And gets there. It's not the end all be all, right? There are other things that are certainly important too. And we talk a lot about paid leave. And this is part of this value, having this caregiver supportive workplace that values things like paid leave is really important. And being able to, not just for moms to be able to do it, but for dads to be able to use that leave and have it available, access to it, take it. I mean, it was very much in the news this week, as we all know, from senior people in this country not taking it. And
I
it
loved
sets
your
an
post
example. It
about
sends a
that
message,
too.
right?
Such a good post.
But it sends a message. And especially those of us in leadership positions, we have people who are looking to us to see what are you going to do? What
Yeah.
is appropriate? What is something that I could do? How could I do those things? Should I be doing those things? And we know there's a lot of stigma out there for moms and dads to not take that leave, and especially dads. And they
Oh
look and
yeah.
they
What are
see,
you gonna do?
yeah,
Like my husband, when he stayed home, like people would say, what are you gonna do? You don't have
Yeah.
nipples to
I'll go
feed the
play
baby.
golf.
Just all sorts of wild things. Like,
I mean, it's been in the news several times. We during the World Cup, same thing. We had a very famous, football soccer player out there who's have first child happens to be due, what in the third, fourth game of the World Cup, and he's like, I'm gonna go on paternity leave, and they're like, and the world goes crazy and says, no, you're not. That's not right. You don't need to do that. You need to be out there on the pitch playing soccer. Really? I mean, is that what the message we really want to send? So again, I think we just have to be thoughtful and recognize that all of us, we all have an opportunity and an obligation to set the right example and to role model these in all the different ways that we have the ability to do, and that somebody is watching you. Always,
mhm.
somebody is looking up to you and going, huh, that's how I do it. Okay, then I should do it that way too.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love these magic wand moments because I don't think we're that far away from these things being able to happen. We are going through a
Hmm.
regression right now, but it can't last forever. I mean, the sheer fact that the labor shortages that are starting to happen in Japan and Germany and are certainly going to hit the United States with the lack of immigration and the aging population, the numbers are what they are.
Yeah.
And also happens from outside of a gender perspective that it's a lot more brown and black than
Yeah.
It has been in previous generations. And so we're going to have to make the workplace more accommodating for differences if you want access to the top talent, which I presume most employers do. And these aren't hard adjustments. You do a great ROI calculation in the book of, everyone says paid leave, we can't afford it. Everyone goes to, okay, so we can afford to lose this many top performers a year. Whatever your business size is that 10? Is that 20? Is it hundreds? That's half their salary to 2x their salary that you're
Yes.
losing. So if you're
Yeah.
okay with that, then don't pay paid leave. Like there is a cost that you're paying even if you don't put it on your income statement. And that's the part that just seems very reactionary in business right now. And so I agree with you. I think the good guys, the good orgs out there that have been doing the work are going to prevail.
Yep.
And it's not that
Yeah.
far from now. We're talking the runway is just a few years away from this labor crisis happening, even with AI and all the automation we can do. We're going to need folks. And so these inclusive behaviors are really critically important. I did want to just circle back to one thing in the book that I had not heard of before. So the big learning nugget that I took away from it was the concept of return ships.
Yeah.
So could we just wrap up with like one novel idea here and any other novel ideas I've missed from the book? But the return ship concept, I think, is very practical. Like this is a very actionable idea for organizations.
Yeah. Well, just very quickly, the return ship idea we also find brilliant. There are so many companies right now that are losing talented women in droves, not meeting their gender balance targets in leadership, and they're not paying attention to this massive population of largely women who have been out of the workforce from, 5 to 10, 15 years, maybe during those prime child rearing ages for their children. And now they're ready. They're motivated. They want to return to work. Just the way things have worked out in their families and their decisions. They feel like they had to step away. Now they're ready to return. Organizations aren't looking at those women, and they're forgetting that, boy, half the people at the top of the curve on IQ, EQ, creativity, they're out there. They're not working, they're available. If you would only create a glide path to return to your organization, much like we do with internships and college grads, how about welcoming people back that have been away? The time to upskill them with the latest technology, get them ready, is very minimal. They are ready to go, and you won't find more grateful and motivated employees than folks that you haven't been sure that they really could return to work, but are so excited to.
Yeah, I've experienced that firsthand in my business. Like, and to Dave's point earlier, the transferable skills of caretaking. Wow, the
Yes.
empathy,
Yeah.
the gratitude, the just enormous talent void that we're accepting right now. It just seems wild to me that we wouldn't see the promise of somebody having done, frankly, really important work for a sustainable society to cultivate
Yeah.
little humans. It's
Yes.
just
Yes.
unless you're producing something capital in a capitalist society, like it doesn't seem valuable unless it's connected to money, which just again seems wild to me. Well, Dave, wrap us up. Like, give us some hope, some wisdom, a little nugget, maybe of something that you wish we talked about today that we haven't, or certainly tell us how to follow y'all's work as well.
Yeah, I think one other piece that I find really invigorating, and I think it keeps me very hopeful that because it feels like the workplace is really pushing the boundaries on things that we've accepted or believed in before. And a lot of this is the idea that when people go on paid leave and caregiving leave of any kind out there, we go through phases of this, right? There's the idea that, and we can just pregnancy is an easy one, just to look at it from the phase perspective of because there's 9 months there of pregnancy and getting ready for that. You can plan for that in that one. A lot of cases you can't plan for other issues around elder care, for example. But in this case, we can plan for it, right? And so we can begin. We got 9 months to prep a manager, and the manager's employee on
Mhm.
them going out on this parental or maternity leave. and think about, all right, so the work that's got to be done when he or she leaves the workforce for this paid leave period, the transition back into the workforce, because that's the important part that we care about, right? As an employer, is like I want my talented employee to go do what they need to do, and then I want them to come back. What does that transition look like? How does it happen? What do I need to say? What do I need to do? Right? What are the planning steps? It's just like anything else. We would, if we were going on vacation or anything else, we're going to plan for that, right? Well, this isn't a vacation. You're going to go do some work. It's just different kind of work now, outside our normal workplace, and then when we come back in, how do we plan for that? And plan
Yeah.
for the whole transition all the way through back to full-time return to work, what that looks like over the course of time, and prep the manager and the employee to be able to do this, because they both need, there's work on both ends that need to happen. And the minute you can do that, right, you can, whether you coach that or do education internally with your company. If you have the expertise to be able to do that in-house, that's great. If not, there are lots of great third-party consultants and firms out there that can help
Yeah.
provide the coaches to do this work. And it's such a game changer because one, you're making better managers, which I love. Brad mentioned before all the things we need to do to help our managers. It's like, of all the people out there who need help, it's those frontline managers doing the work of implementation every day. Help them, provide the coaching. And we're setting ourselves up for success by retaining and hopefully setting them up for continued advancement and promotion for the people that are coming back into the company, right? After they come back from leave. And we can go through, and then it demonstrates, right? We begin to shift the culture and we demonstrate what it looks like to have a culture that supports caregiving and supports care for our workers.
Yeah. Everyone feels good about that. Like
Yeah.
leadership is about caring, and caregiving is a important thing we should all support. Yeah, just a real quick snippet on that. When I read that part of the book, it also reminded me of my experience with my first child being pregnant in corporate America. And I didn't tell anyone until like I had to when I started showing, right? And then it was like tiptoeing, and like I stopped getting
Mm.
assignments, and no one asked me to travel, which I was fine with. I was like, I'll go home and take a nap. That's fine with me. Y'all's loss. I can still do stuff. But when I was on leave, they called me like, they're like, so your job's been eliminated, but you can come back and like create your own job, which gave me like a ton of anxiety. But to your point, Dave, I came back and I created my own job description with the help of an ally, actually, JT Metzger, who shout out to him, was like
Hmm.
the good
Hmm.
guys you all interviewed. He
Yeah.
was like, all right, Julie, if you think you can do this, I trust you. You're a top performer. Like, if this is what you think you can do, go ahead and do it. And they kept me another year. I still left because the company was in trouble, but they got a year more out of me. And what's that worth? Like, I think in a more sustainable corporate environment, you would keep someone in perpetuity,
Yep.
if you do these tiny things to make sure that they have reassurance, that they have access, to support and have a plan for the future to quiet
Yeah.
that anxiety, because it is a really anxious time and that's one less thing to worry
Yeah.
about.
And today it's more important than ever with, you mentioned before, the aging workforce demographics
Yeah,
we have, right? And
yeah.
certainly people are living longer, and so there's more likelihood that we are going to be doing elder care, and maybe even the sandwich generation, right? Of doing elder
Both.
care at the same time we're doing child care. And
Yeah,
so
a lot.
more than ever do we need this kind of support and coaching and leadership within the organization.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll keep talking, right? That's what allies keep doing. We keep speaking up. Workplace Allies is y'all's website, right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal website. You can get access to all the books. Follow David Smith, Brad Johnson on LinkedIn. They both post amazing content, not just about the book right now and all the stories that you're gathering and the great research, but back to those headline moments of like, hey, this happened. Here's our take, which I think is really fun. And then Brad and Dave also, as true allies, support other authors and will do book reads together with funny bar photo pictures. I always enjoy, and to have a stack of recommendations behind me. Thanks a lot. Amazon thanks me for those.
Two guys walk in a bar and somebody's going to learn something.
Yes. Yes.
It's such a twist on a great, it's just such a great unexpected twist. And it's usually a book written by a woman, which I always appreciate men that read books written by women. Yes, we can all do that
Yeah,
more.
of
So,
course. Yeah.
what did I
Yeah.
miss? How else can folks follow your work?
I think you captured it
I think,
well,
yeah.
Julie. Actually, our website is, Workplace Allies, place to find us. And
Website, LinkedIn, you can find us
yeah,
in your favorite Amazon store or local independent bookstore.
yep,
Perfect. Perfect. Well, everybody get fair share and give it to a manager, give it to a decision maker. I think every executive should have somebody on, every executive team should have someone, at least one person that's read this book.
Everybody deserves their fair share.
yeah,
Yes, yes, yes. Fairness is one of my top principles over here. Yeah, so
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Thanks, Brad and Dave, for your important work. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Julie.
Julie.